Ananthya, in the year 1891, a remarkable figure entered this world, armed with an extraordinary intellect destined to leave an undeniable mark on the history. His name, Edward Bernays. Though his influence vibrates through the corridors of time, his name remains unknown to many. Nephew of Sigmund Freud himself, Bernays wielded the power of psychology like a maestro, forever altering the fabric of society. He was the architect of propaganda, the maestro of manipulation, and the progenitor of public relations. With the finesse, he molded the collective consciousness, shaping the thoughts and desires of the masses. Imagine this time when smoking by women was frowned upon, a social taboo. Enter Edward, orchestrating a spectacle that would redefine perceptions. Employing a cadre of young models, he choreographed a parade where they ignited cigarettes, branding them as torches of freedom. This seemingly innocuous act was a stroke of genius, a subtle manipulation that portrayed smoking as a symbol of empowerment in the modern society. But beneath the veneer of liberation lay the real truth. It was a ploy, a tactic to boost sales for American Tobacco Company. Now, Edward was a master of dark arts, adept at shaping public behavior through conscious suggestion. Today, his legacy endures, a reminder of the power of persuasion and the art of influence. Edward, a name obscured by the sands of time. Yet his impact echoes through the ages, a testament to the potency of human mind in shaping the course of history. Like Edward, Bennett also changed the way people eat by conducting a survey of doctors that seemed to indicate that they recommended bacons and egg for breakfast. When in reality, Bernays was just simply asked the doctors if people should eat a hearty breakfast. But this study of doctors' recommendation made bacon and egg a staple morning food, which is still a case to this day. How did he achieve all of this? He used repetition to implant messages into the subconscious mind and associate products and causes with strong feeling like freedom and security. But why am I telling you this? And more importantly, how can you benefit from it? Well, what if we could reverse engineer the methods that he used to sway the behavior of millions of people and instead harness his secret of subconscious mind to better ourselves? A key technique that Bennett used was pairing desires and emotions together. Through the power of suggestion, he would connect a product or political agenda to emotional feelings of happiness, security, and social acceptance. Then he had people visualize them, experience those emotions by engaging with the thing being promoted. This right here is where we can use these techniques to shift our own reality. For example, think about confident people who are genuinely confident. Don't go around telling themselves that they are confident all day long. They simply know it deep down in their bones to be true advertisers and public figures, and have long planted ideas in our subconscious mind through constant repetition and emotional messaging. Jingles, slogans, images which they sleep into the depth of psyche. But now, armed with the understanding of how this process works, we can harness it for ourselves. I'm going to show you how you can brainwash yourself so that you can no longer get brainwashed by the society, and how you can shape both your inner and your outer world with the same tools that have been used to manipulate the masses for generations. And it all lies at the heart of learning how to speak to yourself properly. Because I'm really excited to share with you this phenomena, this concept. So let's jump right into it. The first thing you have to understand in order to reprogram your subconscious mind is self-reprogramming cycle. Now, this is the first thing I had to fully understand for myself that allowed me to go from being a failure entrepreneur mindset, living in lack and backlogs, and just being programmed by society to seek a good job, making me think and believing that this was the only way for me to go, to transiting into an entrepreneur, being responsible for my own income and actually being able to grow and live in abundance. Once I understood this, I was able to completely reprogram myself. Now, there's three main levels to it. So let's get started with it. Initially, you'll notice that it begins with an outgoing thought. some stimulus presented to you, which we call a thought. When someone says now is a terrible time to make money, now is a terrible time to start an online business, the economy is going through the downturn, it's like recession, blah blah blah. Now is a terrible time to buy a house, to sell a house. There is inflation, the interest rates are rising up. Like if you compare this to an animal, this is what a sheep says. And we listen to it and we start to fear and believe it to be true. So what is it that takes the thought? A stimulus that we are presented with, and it turns into an actual belief that we hold to be true. Now, here is what it gets really interesting. When a thought is met, an outgoing thought is met with an emotion or a feeling. If you combine it, then it becomes a belief. Now, let's take a moment to reflect on this. When you have an incoming thought from your environment that says now is a terrible time to start up an online business, now is a terrible time to buy a house or sell a house, or the economy is going through XYZ, and therefore I should be holding on tightly to my money and you know what, not take any risks right now, you start to feel fearful about it. You're very, very afraid of what could happen with the economy going down. And you become very protected. That is what happens when the market goes up, people buy, and the market goes down, people sell. The emotion of fear is a conjunction with the thought of economy collapsing. It becomes a belief. You actually start to believe it. Our nervous systems can't tell the difference between what's imagined and what's real. If we feel it deep down in our nervous system, we start to really accept it to be real. And the subconscious mind, our whole entire being accepts this as real. It accepts it to be reality. We become identified with it. We question all the beliefs that we have except the ones we hold to be true. That are the ones that we don't see, the ones we operate from, the ones that are actual real convictions. Now, what's interesting though is that a belief can still be changed and reconstructed. It's not too late for a belief to be changed, as long as you can identify and become aware of the limiting beliefs that you are operating from. They have a potential to be changed. Now let's talk about what happens to the rest of this cycle when it actually becomes hypnotic, unconscious rhythm and a way of living. Once you have this belief that economy is in a terrible condition, it's terrible time to start an online business or any business, there is something in your subconscious mind called as reticular activating system, the RAS. Once it's held to be a belief, once we have an emotion and a thought together operating as one, RAS gets programmed to notice more instances of where the belief is true. Now you'll start to see instances occurring in your life where you get more bills and you get more problems. You attract more negative people who keep talking about how the economy is terrible, and it starts to fuel this paranoia. You start to notice more and more instances and you get more and more of validation. And once we have enough validation, the game is pretty much over. This then becomes a conviction that this economy is doomed to collapse. It fully becomes a hypnotic rhythm. Like Napoleon Hill would call it, a hypnotic rhythm is something that we never question and we can't really break out of it. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, because they have unconsciously lived a certain way, they have held certain convictions to be true and they can't break free from it. There is a clear mechanism that allows us to break free from this. And in part 2, I'm going to share this with you. But for part 1, it is very, very important that you understand this self-programming cycle and how it operates and how you get manipulated. To give you a concrete example, how I was able to use this to break out of all the debt I had accumulated and how it was me having always paying my basic expenses from a lack mindset to when I initially started parallelly selling real estate along with my dying e-commerce company. I thought that I want shifting to being a successful real estate agent. So initially I started parallelly selling real estate along with my dying real estate e-commerce company. I chose the thought that I wanted to me being a great and a profitable real estate agent. Then I started to feel what it would be like to be a skilled agent, to be responsible, to have the courage to handle big clients, high value clients, make money like huge sales commission and also make strong powerful network. And then I started to consciously look for validations of it, which is what I will show you in the next part. Once you start to consciously look for validation, for confirmations, you start to change the inner conversations that you are having with yourself. The stories that you were telling yourself, how to speak to yourself, this dictates what reality you experience. Because who is closest to you? Who are we most open to? And who do we listen to the most? Someone outside, or the stories that we tell ourselves every single day? So we need to change what default story, what default conversations that is happening here. How we speak to ourselves dictates what reality we experience. So this next part we have to understand is the affirmation validation cycle in order to break free from the hypnotic pattern. Remember, before we talk about the three different levels through which we go through when it begins, and as a thought evolves into a belief, and finally the nail in the coffin is when it becomes a conviction. The question becomes how we speak to ourselves, a way that can induce a permanent change in our lives. I've been obsessed in getting permanent results. Now the temporary ones, I've seen so many people, so many realtors, consultants, entrepreneurs that I've worked with go through a revenue roller coaster. 1 month they do so much, they do like 50, 40, 80k a month, and then the next month they go back to 20, 10, 0. They almost seem to self-sabotage, and I've always noticed that this happens because they have an internal baseline in their life. We don't get what we want, we get what we are willing to tolerate. They are willing to tolerate the 10k a month. Their internal thermostat is set at 10k a month. That's why they are always return back to that, no matter how high they go. It really has to do with the inner conversations that you have to have with yourself. I want you to think about people who are genuinely confident. Do you think genuinely confident people go around telling themselves that they are confident? I'm a confident person. They don't huff and puff their chest like they are a confident person. They don't need to tell themselves they are confident. They have always accepted this as truth. Remember, the conviction that we never question, it just is I am. I don't question it. When you've become one with the thing you want to manifest in your life, you act from that place. When I'm acting from this place, there is no separation. I don't have to tell myself that I am that thing, or I don't have to tell yourself that until you become that thing. I don't have to tell myself that I am that thing. You have to tell yourself until you become that thing. This is how we do it. The first part, how we get started with a new program, a new way of programming ourselves, is with affirmation. A lot of you are very, very familiar with this, but we do it differently here because I have found that doing it in this way as opposed to the other way makes it more effective. So whenever I tell myself something, I'm confident, or in my instance, I'm really a good psychic and my guidance is life-changing and accurate. Initially, when I started off doing predictions and guidance from energy, I was extremely unconfident. Because back then, someone would tell me, that's not true what you are saying. Things don't work the way I told them it would. And I did not have the validation from people. And being a psychic is hard, as there are so many things you can say for guidance, but getting that message that would impact is the key of importance. Initially, there were many readings that I did for myself that proved to be inaccurate. For people around me, that proved to be inaccurate. And it was always a confidence buster. In fact, when I started doing a lot of health healing, I would get that joint pains have been removed and it been healed by me on the subject whom I was working on. But they would not validate it. It was creating a very negative image. So much that I almost gave up healing, but my wife's continuous support in validating me, giving me guidance was life-changing. And on her suggestion, I crafted affirmations where I was like, I can do anything with my psychic abilities. All my predictions are 100% accurate. I have more than enough for me, myself, my family, and my future generations to come. I am a successful coach and clients love working with me. All my clients are getting 100x value from my guidance and my belief work. All my visualizations are true for my clients. But when I told myself this every single day, I didn't really feel it. I didn't really feel like it was real. Because why should I have to tell myself this? Why should I have to look in the mirror and try to convince myself of something? Because the more you try to convince yourself of something, the more you are actually telling yourself subconsciously that it's not real. That there is a separation between where you are currently and where you want to go. If you have to convince myself to do something, it's not really true. Truth comes in realization, in seeing something for what it is, rather than trying to disillusion yourself, right? So I begin with that affirmation, but what really grounded it into reality for me was what really programmed the RAS and reversed the cycle is when I grounded the affirmation in a validation. Now, I'm going to explain you exactly what I mean by this. What an affirmation essentially does, it launches a new model of reality you want to experience. Because chances are, affirmations that you are saying is drastically different from what you're actually experiencing. In my instance, Anand is a good psychic and a coach. When I started, I didn't think I was really good and that I could hold conversations with the high value clients. And why would they need coaching from me? Like, I didn't really believe it. So I just told myself this affirmation and I launched a new reality. When you launch a new reality, your RAS starts to get programmed a little bit. You start to see instances of both, mostly your insecurities, color, what you're seeing, what you're filtering to. So you are going to see more and more instances in where you need to improve. Your perfection kicks in and you are like, oh, but I don't coach like this famous coach influencer that I follow. And you start to size yourself up against others that you have seen. But what you have to understand is that they have been doing for 15 years and this is your day one. So what's the point? What's the use in comparing? I promise you, when I started, I was in the exact same shoes that you are in right now. I remember looking at others and feeling, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. How am I going to do this? How am I going to manage all the business assets? What would I need? How would I build up a team of my own and do it independently all over again? How am I going to learn all of that? It will all come with time. Remember, you are running a marathon and marathon is a step by step, mile by mile, meter by meter. That's how you run a marathon. You don't look at the end and you don't take it all in at once. So don't worry, it's going to get there. But you need to be diligent and focus your mind correctly so you can move the fastest path towards that. With an affirmation, we launched this new reality. But now it's our mission to confirm and ground this reality, to be able to have this realization, to able to see that this is true. One way in which we do this is we become biased. Most successful people or billionaires, people like Elon Musk, they're kind of delusional. Everyone described Elon, especially his ex-wife, described Elon as Elon has his own world. We are just living in it. His sense of reality is so strong that other people get drawn to it. In life, whoever's sense of reality is strongest, everything else gets drawn into it. Whoever wants it less is ultimately who controls the frame. If you want to control the frame, you have to need it less, but also operate from that place of positive delusion that this has already happened, that this is your world. How you do that is by stacking validations on one side. So in my particular example, when I made an intention of becoming a good coach, I consciously looked at only the positive comments, validations I received, where people were saying, oh Anand, you are amazing. This helped me so much. I would take a screenshot of the positive messages that I would receive from them and make it into my wallpaper for weeks. So even one or two negative comments which could put me back that I will not be able to help others, I decided to not read those comments and only focus on the validation that I got from the positive comments. To ground my affirmations of, wow, I'm really a good psychic and a coach. Look at all the positive validations I got. Looking at all those people saying my work was valuable. That is what was helpful for them. And that gave me a fuel to do more work and explore more in the realms of subconscious programming and create a powerful, done for you belief program. Like a recipe of beliefs which every billionaire has and would need to reach this state of abundance. So understand, It can be very, very easy in your day-to-day life to get lost with all the negative things and the negative stimulus. When you look at the news, when you look at everything, you have to make a conscious choice to ignore them, to just stop looking at them. Do you see how that's working? I'm looking at it from a place of how can I become better? How can I take this positively? How can I spin this into an advantage? So when you have an affirmation, you launch a new reality. Now it's your choice in the new reality that you're launching to only look for things that correspond to that affirmation by confirming them. An affirmation launches a new reality. A validation grounds that new reality into realization. When you consistently put an extra effort, the outcomes become evident. And I've experienced this with numerous clients worldwide. My schedule is now nearly booked to capacity. I can now charge and receive more from one single client than from 10 combined, simply because of the value and the results they have received exceeded what they would typically pay. This transformation occurred because of my ongoing inner dialogue I maintained with myself daily without exception. Again, I can't emphasize this all happened because of the inner conversation that I was having with myself every single day without fail. Now, what I want to share with you is a different way to craft your affirmations because most people craft it in a particular tense. But I do it differently and I have helped over 1,000 clients do this for themselves. They have also seen that this has been a lot more effective than just crafting static affirmation. What we want to do is craft dynamic affirmations. So one of the problems I noticed was I was telling myself these affirmations, I didn't really actually believe in them. So we solved that with validation. But also that I noticed that the way I was telling myself these affirmations, I didn't really quite believe in them. But also it just didn't feel right. It didn't resonate with me. Once I started looking in the history, I started to understand that a lot of ancient yogic teachings are also teaching the same. And here's what they are teaching. One of the most fundamental laws of life is the law of impermanence, as the Buddha would call it. But more than that, as the scientific term for this is the second law of thermodynamics, the law of entropy. And it basically states that the chaos in any given system with time is always going to increase. The entropy of any given system is going to increase. So if I spray a perfume in the room, it's going to diffuse and spread out. It's not going to come back into the bottle. It's going to take energy to bring it back into an orderly state. So life is in a constant state of chaos. It is a constant state of becoming, unfolding, moving from one state to the next. It's in this process of chaos, you might be asking, why is it important, Anand? Well, as entropy increases, we can't stay static. We are always becoming someone different. We are always evolving, improving. We are improving from who we were yesterday to who we are now. Every single cell in your body is dying and regenerating. Who you are today is not going to be who you are tomorrow. And this character not only is going to change with time, it changes with situations. So some of my friends listen to my sales call. They say, oh my God, you are a completely different person there. Then they listen to my videos and they say, you are a completely different person here. You have to have many different sides to you. This is how the ego is. Most people think ego is bad, but the ego is like your shadow. You need it to function in your material world. And if your ego is not moldable, you become attached to one way of being. And you say, this is just who I am. You set rules which you don't want to change. This is how I've always been. You're going to keep experiencing the same reality over and over again. What we experience is a direct result of who we are, what identity we are embodying, what character we are embodying at this point in our lives. I'm one way with my parents, I'm one way with my wife, I'm one way with my son, I'm one way with my clients. When I'm making videos, I'm a different person doing all these different things. If you look at my videos now, I even speak differently, right? So I'm evolving and improving based on what I want to accomplish. Our identity is always molded by the goal we set. In psycho-cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz talks about this. He talks about the servo mechanism. When we focus our mind on a goal, everything else gets taken care of. It's kind of like performing a sport. if you're thinking about throwing darts and only thing you are thinking about is throwing it into the target, you're not thinking about individual movements of your arm, you're simply just focusing on the target. Just like that, when you are trying to manifest a goal, focus on the target, focus on the goal, and really hold that goal on top of your mind, and everything else, what you need to achieve that goal, it will be taken care of. You don't need to worry about that. And when I learned this lesson that I must be dynamic, then my identity changed forever. And I learned the importance of doing affirmation in the first person, where I say, I am this, I am that, versus the third person affirmations that I started to do affirmations in the third person. For example, instead of saying I'm a good psychic and a coach, I say Anant is an amazing psychic coach. And I look at Anant as this temporary character that I'm embodying. You might be asking why. Now, there are two main reasons for this. Number one, life is constantly unfolding and becoming. So I will not be the same person when I craft a different affirmation. And every single belief that we hold to be true right now will eventually become a limiting belief. So for example, if I say Anant is very capable to make 100 grand a month, when I want to make 200 grand a month, the 100 grand a month belief will becoming a limiting one. I were to say I'm making 100k a month, I would really become identified with being Anant who only makes 100k a month. It becomes a limitation. Every single belief will eventually become a limiting belief. This is why you have to be always ready to ditch the mask that you're wearing right now, to take on a new mask. It's actually a game of masks if you look at it in one way. I realized that for me, it was a lot easier to dynamically grow at different stages in my life, different stages in my business when I started to do the third person affirmations. I started to really see at this point in my life, I'm really embodying a character. This is a character that I'm being. But beyond this character, I realize who I am. That's where we get into something very profound. This is where I cannot have a definition. If I say I am this, I immediately create a bondage. I immediately create an attachment, and I immediately create a limitation. Therefore, the I am is not constrained to anything. This is that awareness, that sense of being behind it all, the sense of witness behind it all, the witness of choosing consciously to embody an identity, to function in this material world and to do what's necessary. Once you understand that you can take up identities, you can go beyond your limiting identity. And if you want to know more about shifting identities, I urge you to watch that video. Once you go beyond the identity, embodying an identity becomes very simple. But you need to learn how to go beyond it first. Eliminating this attachment to who I am this and I am that instead of Anant is this. At this stage in life, and you realize that this is who I am choosing to embody at this stage in my life. The dynamic identity allows you to become moldable. We want to become moldable and adaptable, not static, not fixated. We want to become dynamic as life is always changing. And if you don't change with it, you are going to get left behind. Anant easily generates $100,000 a month. Anant gets thousands of views on his videos. Not Anant got, but Anant gets. Anant attracts clients with ease. Do you see what's happening here? This is a present continuous tense. Everything is evolving and unfolding. It's simply spontaneously happening. Here are the 3 keys that I'm going to leave you with. I want you to implement it right now to create a powerful affirmation and use validation for yourself. Number 1, pick 4 areas in your life and create 2 affirmations for each. So 4 areas are health, wealth, relationship, and spirituality. You're going to craft 2 affirmations for each. 2 for health, 2 for wealth, 2 for relationship, and 2 for spirituality. Put it in one piece of paper, and all these 8 affirmations, put it right next to your bed and read it every morning and every night before bed. Why? Because this is the most susceptible time for you to reprogram your subconscious mind. Because right now, as soon as you wake up, your subconscious mind is most receptive right before falling asleep and right after waking up. There is a reason why Neville talks about visualizing your ideal scene, your wish fulfilled as you fall asleep. We are most likely to impress our subconscious mind and make these impressions at those 2 particular times, and I've been doing this for last multiple years. And on the second thing I want you to do is write these affirmations in present continuous tense for obvious reasons that we just discussed. And finally, I want you to write them in the third person. Morning and night, you need to read these affirmations and you launch the new design, and I want you to do it at the end of the day. This is just for nighttime or even throughout the day. Notice anything that corresponds to these affirmations. If your aim is to boost sales growth, consider this. When you notice an increase in inquiries or interest from potential customer, take it as a validation of your efforts. Internalize this as an evidence that your goal is manifesting. Tell yourself, this is happening, my strategies are working, and my sales are growing. Look for evidence. Make it your mission throughout the day and night to keep some sort of journal for validation. This is very, very important, and I would argue this is more important than writing and saying the affirmation to yourself. Okay, so now do you remember when I mentioned that the most powerful way to become that person you want to program yourself correctly is to have a clear picture, a target in your mind. So go on and click on the video that is pinned right in here about creating an identity by choice, and I'll see you in this next video right now.